Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps.
Okay, picture this. One U.S. tech company, Microsoft, spending $15.2 billion in one country, the UAE. And part of that massive number involves sending over 60,000 of NVIDIA's most advanced AI chips. We're talking the GB300 Grace Blackwell here.
It's definitely one of the biggest stories out there. A huge deal.
Yeah.
But like you said, the sources we've been digging into show it's more than just a business transaction. Much more.
Right. So that's what this deep dive is about today. We're going to try and unpack the geopolitics, the sort of tech transfer questions, the sheer amount of money involved.
And why the UAE is really positioning itself right at the forefront, maybe the leader globally in AI.
Exactly. Our mission here is to look at the sources, see what they tell us about the money, the tech, but also the political friction. How did this even happen?
Because it's complex, right? You've got this deal needing formal U.S. government approval.
From the Commerce Department, yeah.
But then you also have, public statements from key political figures sounding very different, saying these advanced chips shouldn't leave the U.S.
Sets up a real tension. Yeah. Okay, let's get into it.
Here, let's do it.
So the money. That $15.2 billion commitment from Microsoft, it covers the period from 2023 when it kicked off through the end of 2029.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how transparent they seem to be about the spending breakdown, at least based on the sources.
Like what?
Well, by the end of next year, 2025, the plan is to have spent just over $7.3 billion.
Okay.
And that's not just, running costs. It includes a $1.5 billion equity stake in G42.
G42. That's the UAE's sovereign AI company, right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
And on top of that equity, there's over $4.6 billion in capital expenses. So building out advanced AI and cloud data centers there, big infrastructure play.
Okay, so that's the initial phase, laying the groundwork.
Yeah.
What about the rest, 2026 to 2029?
Even more spending plan then. Over $7.9 billion. And the bulk of that $5.5 billion is specifically tagged for more infrastructure expansion.
So they're doubling down, essentially. This is a long-term foundational build-out.
Absolutely. And you can't have that foundation without the core technology, the silicon.
The chips.
The chips. Microsoft got licenses approved, apparently, back in September 2025.
Okay.
To ship the equivalent of over 60,400 additional A100 chips. And the key thing is, this involves NVIDIA's latest generation, the GB300 Grace Blackwell GPUs.
Wait, so they already had some?
It did. The sources mentioned that under licenses secured during the previous administration, the Biden administration, Microsoft had already built up a stock equivalent to about 21,500 NVIDIA GPUs in the UAE.
Okay, so A100s, H100s, H200s.
Exactly. But this new tranche, the 60,000 plus, centered on the GB300. That's a whole different level.
Why? What makes the GB300 so much more significant or sensitive?
Well, it's exponentially more powerful. It allows for trading much larger AI models much faster. It's a real leap in capability.
Right.
And that's precisely why exporting it is such a big deal, politically and strategically. The U.S. government knows giving access to this kind of power isn't just a commercial sale. It's a strategic decision.
Okay, so huge money, cutting-edge hardware secured. But like you said, moving 60,000 of the world's most powerful chips, it's not simple. What about that political friction you mentioned, getting Commerce Department approval?
Yeah, that's where the sources point to this apparent contradiction. You have the deal approved with all these security conditions we'll get into.
Okay.
But it seems to clash pretty directly with some of the rhetoric, right? Like former President Trump's comments on 60 Minutes saying the U.S. wouldn't let anybody have the most advanced chips other than the United States.
But the licenses were approved. So what does that tell us? It's not a flat ban.
It suggests the approach isn't just no, it's more like access is possible, but under very specific, very controlled, and frankly, very expensive conditions. Exceptions can be made, but they come with a massive price tag and strings attached.
And how did the UAE meet those conditions? What was their side of the bargain to get the U.S. to say yes?
Access wasn't just granted. It seems it was, in a way, purchased through a huge strategic commitment from the UAE to the U.S.
How huge?
The sources state the UAE pledged to invest an absolutely staggering sum, $1.4 trillion.
Wait, hang on. $1.4 trillion.
Trillion, yeah, in U.S. energy and AI-related projects.
The UAE's entire annual GDP is around $540 billion, give or take.
Yeah.
How is a $1.4 trillion pledge even feasible? Is that real money or more like a symbolic guarantee.
Collateral.
It's definitely an outsized sum, massively so. And I think that's the core insight, right? When the technology is this critical, U.S. policy isn't just about bans. It's about these complex, almost unbelievable exceptions. This deal kind of defines the new cost of entry, the price of trust in the global AI race.
It's the strategic cost for access to the future, essentially. You can put it that way. And it lines up with what the UAE ambassador, Yusuf Al-Ataiba, reportedly said. He called this arrangement setting a new gold standard for securing AI models, chips, data, and access.
A gold standard. So it's not just about the money or the pledge, it's about the mechanism of trust and security itself.
Exactly. Which brings us to this thing called the IgAA.
IgAA.
The Intergovernmental Assurance Agreement. This seems to be the linchpin. The how. It's described as a first-of-its-kind binding framework, but get this, it's between the two private companies.
Between Microsoft and G42, not the governments.
Between Microsoft and G42, yeah. That's what the sources indicate.
That sounds like the private sector is basically taking on national security duties, handling export controls. Why structure it that way?
Well, maybe the thinking is that securing tech like this, across borders, needs operational speed and detail that governments maybe struggle with. By making it a binding corporate agreement, apparently drafted in close consultation with both governments, U.S. and UAE, you create a structure that's auditable, enforceable, and potentially moves faster than traditional oversight.
So the companies are on the hook for compliance day to day. What areas does this IgAA actually cover? What rules does it set?
It's meant to be pretty comprehensive. Strict rules on cybersecurity, physical security for the data centers, for the chips themselves.
Makes sense.
Clear guidelines on export controls and technology transfer, making sure this tech doesn't leak to unintended third parties.
Crucial.
Plus standards for data protection, responsible AI use, and things like robust Know Your Customer KYC practices. Meeting or even exceeding U.S. requirements seems to be the goal.
And that responsible AI piece, it goes beyond just the IgA, right? There's mention of a new foundation.
Yes, the Responsible AI Future Foundation, RAIFF. Based in Abu Dhabi, founded jointly by G42, Microsoft, and MBZ UAI, the AI university there.
And its purpose.
Seems to be about promoting ethical standards and best practices as this powerful AI tech spreads, particularly in the Middle East and the Global South. Ensuring its use beneficially considers diverse cultures, not just, maximizing profit. It's about setting norms.
Okay, so we've got the money, the chips, the intense security framework, the political balancing act. But the big question remains, why the UAE specifically for this massive build-out? There must be something driving this incredible level of investment there.
Yeah, and the simplest answer, according to the sources, is just overwhelming local demand.
Demand already.
Apparently, yes. There's a Microsoft AI diffusion report cited, and it shows the UAE actually leads the world in per capita generative AI usage.
Leads the world. What's the number?
59.4%.
Yeah.
59.4%. That's astounding. What explains that?
Well, that number puts them just fractionally ahead of Singapore, which is at 58.6%. But after those two, no other country apparently breaks the 50% mark.
So, why the UAE? It's likely a mix of things, right? High digital literacy, strong government pushes on AI adoption, maybe the concentration of global businesses needing these tools.
So Microsoft isn't building this infrastructure hoping people will come. The demand is already there.
Exactly. These GPUs are needed right now to provide access to the top AI models from OpenAI, from Anthropic open source models, plus Microsoft's own Copilot applications.
It flips the script a bit. The challenge for Microsoft isn't risking getting ahead of the curve.
It's keeping pace. Keeping pace with existing, maybe even accelerating demand in that region. That 59.4% figure makes the $15 billion look less like a speculative gamble and more like a necessary investment to serve the market that's already there.
That makes a lot more sense. Okay, but hardware alone doesn't make an AI hub. You need people, train people. Does the investment cover that too?
Oh yeah, heavily. The sources emphasize the talent pillar. It's not just about concrete and silicon. It's about building a whole self-sustaining tech ecosystem.
What does that look like on the ground?
Well, Microsoft already has a decent footprint. Almost 1,000 full-time employees and staff in the UAE from 40 different nationalities. Nearly 40 engineers based there already.
Okay, a base to build on.
And they're actively building. They set up a global engineering development center in Abu Dhabi specifically to attract top global talent.
Right.
But the really eye-popping number on the talent side is the commitment to skill 1 million people in the UAE in AI by the end of 2027.
1 million. How?
It seems to be a broad effort, upskilling 120,000 government employees, training 175,000 students, plus 39,000 teachers through various programs and partnerships.
It's aiming to transform the workforce, the whole of society strategy almost, turning the UAE from just an AI consumer into an AI developer too.
Precisely. And part of that ecosystem involves R&D with a purpose. There's a new Microsoft AI for Good lab in Abu Dhabi.
AI for good. What's the focus?
It's staffed with PhD-level researchers, and the goal is explicitly to tackle humanitarian challenges, particularly in the Middle East and Africa.
Could you give an example?
Yeah. The sources mention one project, training large language models for low-resource languages, specifically languages spoken in Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and the DRC.
So bringing the benefits of AI to communities that might otherwise be left behind by the big commercially focused models.
Exactly. It's about inclusive AI development, extending the reach beyond the usual markets.
Okay, so let's try and pull all these threads together. What's the big picture takeaway here?
Well, it's clearly not just a straightforward tech sale. It's this incredibly complex deal mediated by governments linking absolutely cutting-edge U.S. tech
Those NVIDIA chips.
to this enormous financial and strategic commitment from the UAE.
And the whole thing is held together by this novel security framework, the IgAA, enforced primarily by the companies themselves.
Right. And the result, the UAE gets cemented as this critical, trusted hub for AI development and deployment. They've essentially traded massive investment for guaranteed access to strategically vital technology.
Becoming a key node, not just consuming AI, but diffusing it, especially, it seems, toward the global south, using these private agreements to navigate the geopolitical complexities.
Yeah. Which leads to a really interesting final thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay.
Given how much this whole arrangement relies on the IgAA, that binding agreement between two private companies to enforce what are essentially national security and export control standards, does this signal a shift?
A shift in how global tech transfer works.
Maybe. As technology gets ever more powerful, more sensitive, are we seeing a future where the enforcement of crucial controls moves away from being purely governmental, towards structures that place accountability, at least operationally, onto the corporations themselves?
Deputizing the private sector for geopolitical strategy, in a way.
That's the question, isn't it? What are the implications when private companies become the frontline enforcers of national security interests in the tech domain? Something to think about.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.